So if you're trying to design a beautiful, unique landscape for your home garden or your backyard, I know that it can be really overwhelming, and I hear this all the time that you don't know where to get started or what to actually do to make your dreams a reality. So I wanted to show you one of my newer gardens here that's a pathway, a walkway, and sort of just some tips and tricks that you can use to implement in your own garden that may help you to create a better garden design. So stay tuned and we'll get to it. My name is Amy. I'm from prettypurpledoor.com, and I help home gardeners create landscapes that are uniquely you. And I cover a lot of aspects of garden design just so that you can sort of level up your own garden design in your backyard and just learn some tips and tricks that are going to make things a lot more easier. So that's what I'm here for, and that's what we'll be doing in this video. So let's get started. So the first tip that I have, number one, is to think about structure and backbone. And what does that actually mean? What is structure? What is backbone? So backbone I consider to be the bones of the garden as far as like plants. So usually in backbone, I'm talking about evergreen shrubs and trees or ornamental trees that look really nice. Anything that you would consider in the dark, desolate months of winter that would still be there and still be giving your garden some sort of bones to hold it in place. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to backbone. And I think this is like the biggest mistake that I see a lot of home gardeners make is not thinking about backbone. So you can see here along the whole edge of my property, I have these emerald green arborvitae trees, and I've had these for years. So I plan my landscape and I do it in phases because it's a lot to manage all at once. So this is sort of the backbone that I'm working with. And even though for years it was just a row of trees, I'm slowly adding to that and turning it into something better. But without that row of trees, I would lose all of the privacy that I have, and it really would make this garden not necessarily work as well as it's going to work with the backbone. So always think about that backbone piece. And structure, I'm more referring to as hardscape elements in the landscape. So here we have this beautiful river rock walkway that I put together. I did this myself. And this is a path, so it's an actual structural element in my garden, and it leads to a circular brick patio in the back, and I also DIY'd that. So I've been working on this in phases, clearly, and those are two structural elements. And then you can see the arbor that kind of separates the walkway from the patio, and that's another structural element. So structure can be physical hardscape elements like paths, walkways, patios, arbors, things like that, porches, decks, things like that. And the actual backbone is the evergreen planting or the trees and the things that will keep interest all year long. So number one is to obviously consider those two things. The second tip that I have when it comes to designing a great garden is to hide views. So when you're talking about a path in particular, you want to create spots that are hiding the actual path from other people. So if people are going to use this path, they're going to come out my back door, which is over there, or they're going to be in the middle of the yard, which is over there. So what I've done is I've planted grasses, standing ovation blue stem, and these will get 5 feet high. And this little guy here that's really tiny now, that's going to get pretty high. It's going to get 6 feet high. So if you're standing over there on my back porch or in the middle of my yard, it's going to disguise this path. You're not going to see the whole thing from beginning to end. So if you're trying to get people to come more out into your landscape and explore your landscape, creating a path is a great way to do it. But the next thing you have to think about beyond creating the path is to how do you hide pieces of that path so it'll invoke curiosity and create sort of a sense of wonder and curiosity in people so that they do go out and explore your landscape more. And trust me, this really works super well. So if you have a path, put something in front of it so people can't see the whole thing, and they'll just instinctively start coming out into your landscape. It's really cool and it works great. The next tip that I have for you is to vary the heights and also the types of plants that you're using. I'm going like this and I don't really know why. But if you're so when you start to vary the heights of plants, I think this is a big mistake that a lot of beginner gardeners make, is to start to pick plants, and even if they're thinking about design and thinking about color schemes and really working hard at getting all of that right, a lot of the plants end up being like a round, mounded 1 to 2 foot plant or perennial flower, and that's all well and fine to incorporate perennials into your garden, but there's so many other kinds of plants that you can explore. And what you want to do is create interest at all different levels, height levels. Here I'm using this arbor, which has vines on it, which is very tall. I'm using these beautiful grasses, of course. I have shrubs, perennial flowering shrubs. I have evergreen shrubs. I have perennial plants. I even have ground covers in here. So I'm going from the very bottom, lowest, to the very top up here, and trees even in my landscape. So start to think about, just go out in your landscape and start to think about, take an inventory of what types of plants you have, and start to think about what you can possibly incorporate into your landscape as well. I'm going to guess that you don't have any grasses or enough grasses, and that you probably don't have any ground cover. So those are 2 things that you can start to incorporate into your landscape just to mix things up just a bit. So it's going to help you to vary the heights, and it's also going to add more interest because you're introducing different types of plants into your landscape. So if you're liking these tips, I just wanted to let you know that I have a course, an online course that you can check out. It's called Design Your 4-Season Garden, and it'll take you step by step through all of the decisions that I'm making here. This is just sort of a quick overview of what's going on. But if you're looking for more of a handheld approach to designing a beautiful garden, how to pick plants, how to do plans, things like that, you should definitely check out that course. I'll leave the link in the description below for you. My next tip is related to focal points. So usually when I'm designing any kind of garden, I'm thinking about what the garden should do for the person. Like, what is the point of the garden? So this particular garden is like a walk-through, pass-through garden to get people to go to that destination at the end, which is that beautiful patio. So when I'm making these decisions, I'm thinking about getting people to come through here, and I don't want them to fly through, so I created a curved path, but I do want them to proceed that way. So adding focal points is what I think about before I even place any of the other plants. So clearly that arbor archway is a huge focal point in this garden, and who wouldn't want to go forward to explore that? And I don't want them to miss everything that's in front of it, because I'm really creating a really nice area here too that's going to fill in nicely. So what I did was I used, let me go this way, this hydrangea here. It's a native hydrangea. It's called Invincible Limetta. It's only going to get 3 feet tall and wide, but it's going to be a beautiful focal point. And when you see that shrub, everything else is texture and interest and color, but that is really going to shine in this particular garden. So that's sort of my focal point that's going to move people forward, and then once they turn their head, they're going to see this arbor and they're going to keep going. So think about focal points, and don't just place a container or a fountain without thinking about what the purpose of that focal point is. I see a lot of people, they'll stick a fountain or a little water feature in like the corner of their garden, but like, do you really want people to walk to like the corner of your house that's like the far side, not near where the walkway is? You probably don't. So when you're placing a focal point, you should make sure that you're putting it in a place that is a destination for people into your garden, so that they're not going and you can use them to control the flow, which is really fun and interesting to me. And you know, sometimes you don't get it right on the first try, so you might want to place it somewhere and then just kind of see if people go towards it or what they're doing. And if it's not really doing what you want it to do, you can always move it and just sort of experiment with that. That's why I really love like big, large pots, or those fountains that you can just buy and like move around. Like, you can kind of experiment that way without having to make a permanent decision until you're really sure that the focal point is doing what you want people to do in your garden. My next tip is to use groups to create rhythm. And when I say groups, I mean groups of plants, all of the same plant, or groups of color, so plants that are different but are in all the same color. So there's two different ways that you can do it. I like to do both. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what I mean by that and creating rhythm. I treat this, even though it's two different sides of the path, I treat this as one garden. And I don't treat it as two of equal gardens that are exactly the same on either side. I just sort of treat it as a garden with a path in the middle. So over here I have coral bells, and everything's really small right now, obviously, guys. But I have these lime green coral bells, and they're in a grouping of three of the same plant. And I don't have 3 coral bells over here in that color. I have 1 coral bell, but it's actually a burgundy color. So what I'm actually doing is I'm adding more over there, which is further down the path. So even though I am not doing a symmetry, but remember the point of this garden is to bring people towards me, bring them this way. So what better way to do that and then to create groups, and then create groups forward. So I'm bringing people into the garden a little bit more. So you can do that with, like I said, the same color or the same plant. These are the same plant. I'm doing that again with reverse plants, the coral bells. I have 1 single coral bell here that's a burgundy color. And then I have a grouping of 5 of them over on this side, which are going to surround that Invincible hydrangea. So again, it's pulling that color into the garden more. But I'm also doing it with the burgundy color throughout the garden. So I have the standing ovation blue stem which has this purplish color on it. This October skies is a lot darker. I have dazzleberry sedum, I think it's called. I have those, which are more of a low growing ground cover, and they're in that same burgundy color. Clearly this purple fountain grass is. So I'm using the same color throughout to create this rhythm where your eye is going to start bouncing around. So that's the way that I use groupings of the same plant or the same color in my landscape to create that rhythm. If you like these tips, I think that you should definitely check out the Design Your Forces in Garden course, because it goes into a lot more depth of how to create a really beautiful and unique landscape. So I hope to see you over there.